So the church is all ready to celebrate a new Jubilee year, which is something that she does after certain intervals of time, because after all, the Catholic faith is the faith that happens in time. It's God acting in our actual lives and the history of the world. And so this is something that the church does fairly often with quite a bit of fanfare and even cultural fanfare that comes along with it. In 1550, for example, the church used Michelangelo's Last Judgment as this major focal point to use in the Sistine Chapel for its celebrations. In the year 1650, Pope Alexander VII commemorated Bernini to make a new chair of St. Peter's sculpture, which you can still see in St. Peter's Basilica today. In 1950, they created the bronze holy doors as well as a papal national anthem. In the year 2000, they commissioned this massive epic Jubilee bell. And now in the year 2025, the church has commissioned a new mascot named Luce. And maybe it's unfair for me to compare poor Luce to all of those things. Some people think that Luce is great. I saw J.D. Flynn from The Pillar write a little op-ed about it and saying that he likes Luce. Other people are having complete meltdowns on Twitter about the infantilization of the Catholic faith. And some think it's based and it's super cool. Probably people who are a little bit too online and a little too fascinated with anime and Japanese manga culture. But for me, this response is a big part of the problem. The question shouldn't be, do I like some particular piece of art or some particular cultural manifestation? The question is, does this have a purpose that aligns with the church's mission? Does this further advance the church's mission of proclaiming the kingdom to the world and drawing people into relationship with Jesus or not? Not, do I like it? Does it please me? Does it appeal to my cultural conditioning and sensibilities? And ultimately, when we start to have those kinds of conversations, I think we start to just lose the plot and the key thing that we should be questioning. When I think about this, I think the thing that alarms me the most about it is during the press conference, I believe the particular cardinal whose name is evading me now, he revealed that the motive behind this was to appeal to pop culture, which is so beloved by the youth today. And so it's an attempt to become relevant through the means of pop culture. And I think that's where my greatest concern comes from, because culture is something that the church should show a lot of concern for. Culture isn't a trivial thing. G.K. Chesterton said that culture is a way of life. It's not just superficial things like language or food or how you dress. Those are fixtures of it, but it's more substantially a way of life. It's the things that you believe. It's the ethical creeds that you might uphold. It's the legal system that you might have. It's the educational system that transmits that culture. It's the technology and the agriculture and the way that you organize yourselves as a society. Christopher Dawson, the great Catholic historian, said that that culture is embodied religion. So religion is the nucleus of what culture is, and then as layers of embodiment and expression are placed upon that, and are outgrowths of that religious creed, that's how we start to get culture. Now, pop culture, I would say, is antithetical to true culture. Pop culture, has a very different purpose. If the purpose of true culture is to give us the means of human flourishing and what Pope Benedict liked to call integral human development, then pop culture is completely antithetical to that, because pop culture, its purpose is to propose a product to us rather than a way of life. It's industrialized commodity culture, consumer culture. And I think that the church should be a lot more shrewd than they appear to be when they seem to be embracing and proposing an alignment with pop culture rather than authentic culture. And what is a mascot, after all, other than something that identifies and summarizes and represents who and what a group or a team or an organization, or in this case, a religious creed or a religious celebration is all about? Is this really what best summarizes us? Based on the reactions that we're seeing on social media, it's at best controversial. Some people like it, lots of people don't. And it just creates unnecessary division, I would say, in the church. You wouldn't get that with a Jubilee bell or a great work of art like Michelangelo's Last Judgment, or the Chair of St. Peter, or the papal anthem. Those are the kinds of things that actually draw us all together and strengthen our sense of culture and identity. Something that is extracted from consumer culture that has a very limited appeal and then is somehow used to represent the whole seems like a self-defeating effort. And it does seem to be a consistent theme with where the church has been at, especially lately. But frankly, I mean, this kind of thing has been going on for quite a long time. There were hints of this kind of thing in the Jubilee year, and some of the stunts and the gimmicks that they used to celebrate that time. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing, and it's a bit concerning for those of us who really care about the church's ability to execute its more important mission of evangelizing, of celebrating the great mystical tradition of Christ's redemption of the world and his incorporation of us into that new covenant through his blood and his sacrifice. Does that mean we should be having meltdowns on social media about it, as if this is just like one more indication, one more nail in the coffin of Catholicism? Well, no, I'd probably align closer to Mr. J.D. Flynn on that question. I think people do need to chill out a little bit, but at the same time, I think there's nothing wrong with it inspiring conversations about how we can be more effective in the way that we reach out to the world and try to exhibit our faith and our culture to the world. I think we need to have a better understanding of what culture is, especially considering that the word cult, which is like worship of the divine, is at the center of the etymology of that word. Who should be better equipped to answer the question, what is culture, than the true religion of the Catholic Church? And yet we somehow seem to be stumbling and grasping at second-rate expressions or even antithetical expressions of what true culture is. So it's too bad that we aren't doing a good job of this. It's too bad that we are using desperate attempts to appeal to pop culture. That's the language that the Vice article I read about it used. I mean, that's how it's being received in the secular culture. They see this as a desperate attempt to be relevant. And though some people might think it's effective, I think a lot of us don't. I was at a restaurant today, actually, with visiting my dad, and brought some of the kids along. And it was at a time of day when most of the clientele were older, a lot of geriatric, a lot of retired people. And there was one point, like, they had music going on the whole time. And there was one point where Sweet Child O' Mine by Guns N' Roses came on, which is a song that I certainly loved a lot as a teenager who played guitar and wanted to mimic what I saw on stage there. But I was looking around and thinking, like, do any of these people want to listen to this right now? No, they don't. And this is the problem with industrialized consumer cafeteria culture, is that it's proposed with a variety of options that are meant to appeal to each individual based on our individualized society. But then you can't draw from that model to represent the whole and to try to draw people together and in a sense of cultural identity. That just fails, and it's incoherent and self-contradictory to the aims of culture. So yes, I wish we could do better. I wish we could have a better conversation about this as a church, and I wish that our clerics, who are well educated in history and theology and philosophy, would stop pandering and start leading and guiding us based on the richness of their formation. Can I ask you to stick around for one extra minute? Because if you enjoyed that, well, first of all, thanks for watching. But now I could really benefit from your help, which you can do in a couple of ways. You can check out my sponsor, Real Estate for Life, who is a network of pro-family real estate agents that can connect you with one in your area. So if you're looking to buy a home, check them out at realestateforlife.org. And if you can help out directly financially, I tend to trust that most of my regular viewers can afford to drop a $5 tip in my jar once a year. And if they did, I wouldn't have to worry about the financial viability of this effort. So if you do want to support, you can go to brianholdsworth.ca/support, or join me in my locals community to get exclusive content and chances to interact with me and members of the like-minded community at brianholdsworth.locals.com.